Chapter 5 Characters. Alistair. If Alistair is the sole ruler of Ferelden. King Alistair Theron was crowned the ruler of Ferelden after the end of the Fifth Blight, and is considered a hero among his people for having fought against the Darkspawn as a Grey Warden. He is one of the few known to have ever left the Secretive Order, never mind one who went on to rule a nation afterwards. Some in Ferelden claim that the Theron line ended with the death of King Cailan, and that the existence of an unknown bastard was a lie imposed upon the people to overthrow King Nanora. As such, Alistair's rule has been plagued with trouble, both within his own lands as well as the neighbouring Orlais. The Blight greatly weakened Ferelden, and many believe that a renewal of the long-standing rivalry between the two nations is inevitable. If Alistair and Nanora agreed to marry and rule jointly. King Alistair Theron was crowned ruler of Ferelden after the end of the Fifth Blight. His people consider him a hero for fighting against the Darkspawn as a Grey Warden. Few Wardens have ever left the Secretive Order, and he is the only one of those who went on to rule a nation. Queen Anora, daughter of the legendary Tern Loghain, rules at his side. Although Ferelden has prospered under their reign, it was greatly weakened by the Blight. Tensions with neighbouring Orlais have been high, and many believe a renewal of their long-standing conflict is inevitable. If imported from a save where Alistair remains a Grey Warden. A hero of the recent Fifth Blight, the Grey Warden Alistair is credited alongside the hero of Ferelden with slaying the Archdemon, and sparing Thedas the ravages of the Darkspawn. Rumour has it that he is an heir to the Ferelden throne, but that he turned down the deference to Queen Anora, daughter to the treacherous Tern Loghain. If Alistair married and ruled together with the hero of Ferelden. King Alistair Theron was crowned ruler of his kingdom after the end of the Fifth Blight, with the legendary hero of Ferelden reigning as his queen. Both former Grey Wardens are widely popular in their homeland, though some claim Alistair is not of Terran blood and that his bloodline as a king's bastard son is a lie imposed on Ferelden to depose Queen Anora. Thus, the royals' rule has been plagued with trouble, both within the kingdom as well as with neighbouring Orlais. The Blight greatly weakened Ferelden, and many believe a renewal of the long-standing rivalry between the two nations is inevitable. If Alistair is exiled. Once the Grey Warden, and rumoured to be the bastard son of King Merrick of Ferelden, Alistair turned down the throne and abandoned his order at the height of the Fifth Blight in Ferelden. He has slipped into anonymity, living down his disgrace in a drunken stupor in the Free Marches. Anders. Magic is a tool, same as a bow or sword. Would you cut off a child's hand to ensure he never wields one in anger? Anders has a rocky history with the Circle of Magi. Taken from his family when his talents first manifested, Anders was still a boy the first time he ran away from the Circle. Recaptured and returned dozens of times, Anders was still considered only a reckless scamp by First Enchanter Irving, who thought his easy temper and sense of humour made him no true threat. But during his final escape, Anders befriended the Warden Commander of Amaranthine and accepted an offer to become a Grey Warden. Life as a Warden changed him, introducing him to the free faith spirit called Justice, who slowly convinced Anders to turn his attention beyond his personal suffering. Infused with Justice's fervour, Anders offered to merge with the spirit in the name of mage freedom, starting them both down a dangerous path that turned the purity of justice into the unthinking hatred of vengeance. Anders, after the Deep Roads. In the past 3 years, Anders has become more reclusive, verging on paranoid. When not with the champion, he spent his time among the Ferelden refugees in Darktown, healing their ills and counting on their royalty to protect him from curious Templars. After his friend Karl was made tranquil and then killed, Anders was convinced that the Chantry's entire structure must be overturned to free mages completely from their control. He has joined a group of like-minded apostates who are slowly wearing away Kirkor's circle by helping other mages escape. Their spirit of vengeance inside him has manifested more strongly, making it nearly impossible for him to control himself when fighting Templars. Anders, the last 3 years. If Ella was killed. The past 3 years has seen Anders cross the edge from moodiness into open paranoia. Increasingly, his inner struggle against the spirit vengeance has boiled over into his dealings with the rest of the world. It's clear he is losing this fight. More determined than ever to see the mages of Thedas freed, Anders has taken to spending long hours cloistered with ancient Aventur texts, adding more layers to his already lofty plans for overthrowing the Chantry. If Ella lives. After his attack on Ella, Anders lost interest in the cause of Mage Revolution. Convinced that he was no better than an abomination, Anders was determined to gain mastery over the spirit inside him, or die trying. It is increasingly apparent that he is losing this struggle. Prone to wild mood swings between deep melancholy and manic determination, Anders has again taken up the mantle of mage freedom, though it is unclear whether this decision came from Anders or justice. If Hawk is in a romance with Anders. Hawk's statue as champion has protected Anders from the attention of the Templars despite his increasing notoriety. Though they have lived openly together for some time, Anders remains uncomfortable in the spotlight Hawk's presence has cast him into. In private, though, he remains a tender and devoted lover. He has repeatedly declared that Hawk is the only reason he's retained any sanity at all. Evelyn Valen. If it's family you protect, doesn't matter who it is, blood or not. Evelyn was born in Orlais, but she never knew the country. Her father, Benoit de Lac, was a chevalier who lost his patron to the game of intrigue. He fled to Ferelden while Evelyn was an infant, and though his holdings were meagre, he was determined he would have the life that he had lost. She would become a knight, no matter what the cost. He eventually sold everything to sponsor Evelyn into King Caelan's service. Knightly skills seemed bred into Evelyn's bones, but she had her doubts, starting with her namesake, Sir Evelyn. The first female knight of Orlais was orphaned, mocked for her looks, and murdered while she dared stand with men in tournament. Her glory lies in tragedy, but the living Evelyn doesn't revere sacrifice. A principled death is still a death. Her father was proud of her, but she would never be the knight he wished for. Evelyn married Wesley Valen while serving in the Verelden army. They were kindred spirits and determined guardians. His death during the Blight scared her, not just his loss, but that she failed to protect him. Evelyn was healed in the past year, but she has yet to forgive herself. Accordingly, she is fiercely protective of the Hawks and Hawk. They share a bond in loss, a connection she cherishes, but will not allow to be repeated. Evelyn after the Deep Roads. Outcome of the way should be, if the quest was completed. Since the adventure in the Deep Roads, Evelyn was settled into life as the captain of the guard. She has removed the stain of Captain Jen's corruption and turned the guardsmen into effective enforcers of law and order. If the quest was not completed. Since the adventure in the Deep Roads, Evelyn has redoubled her efforts in the city guard. The previous captain left suddenly, and while a Ferelden could not be promoted outright, Evelyn's military experience made her an adequate choice for the captain of the guard in Seneschal Brand's estimation. Becoming captain of the guard title should have brought Evelyn stability, but she has instead found herself taxed by having so many people under her care. She is very protective of the people she commands, to the point of training each guardsman herself and personally reinforcing otherwise simple patrols. Injury rates are lower than ever before, but the guards are beginning to feel smothered. Evelyn is utterly dedicated to her job, leaving no time for anything beyond the occasional sidetrack with Hawk. Even that is an excuse to watch over people she cares about. She is a guardian in every waking moment, and she doesn't seem to know how to put down the weight she carries. Evelyn, the last 3 years. If Evelyn marries Donnic. Thanks to the champion's actions, Evelyn and Donnic Hender were married a year ago in a simple ceremony on the Hawks estate. They honeymooned in Orlais, the only time that Evelyn has visited the country of her namesake. The pair has since settled into a happy marriage. Although she remains his captain and he her guardsman, Evelyn now strictly divides her personal and private life. She is no less driven to keep her guardsmen safe, but Dondic provides another perspective, and she is now giving her guard the authority they need to truly serve Kirkwall. As a force for law and order, the guard has never been more respected. This brings its own challenges, however, as some amongst the Templars would prefer that the guard be under their direct command. If Evelyn doesn't marry Donnic. It is 3 years since the Tucanari uprising, and Guard Captain Evelyn is as driven as ever. Her guards could give a Ferelden battalion a run for their coin, and she commands their undying respect. However, all would agree that she's the hardest captain that they have ever served. Evelyn takes that as a compliment, although it is not always intended as such. She knows it, but accepts it as necessary for the greater good, both theirs and that of Kirkwall. Being captain of the guard is an all-consuming position that she wouldn't give up for the world, although some in the Templars would prefer that her guard had a lesser presence in the keeping order. At the least, they would prefer that Evelyn would be more accepting of their oversight. Her association with the champion has helped dissuade them, but pressure is mounting. Bartrand Tethras. Half of Kirkwall wants to be my best friend right now. The history of noble House Tethras stretches back to the foundation of Orzammar. The memories say that 3 times a child of House Tethras took the office of Assembly Steward. They held appointments in the Shepherd of Memories and the Shepherd of Golands, but no longer. In the 2nd year of the reign of King Edrend Aiducan, Lord Andvar Tethras was found guilty before the Assembly of willfully manipulating proving matches in favour of his house. For this affront to the ancestors, he and his house were sentenced to exile on the surface. Andvar died a mere 5 years later, leaving behind his lady Ilsa, 10-year-old Bartrand, and 2-year-old Varric. Exile, surface life, and the loss of her husband conspired against Lady Ilsa, who took to drink, leaving Jarl Bartrand to manage what was left of House Tethras. By the time he was 15, Bartrand had doubled his family's fortune. The disgrace of House Tethras fueled his ambition, and his once noble title gave him an instant place among the Kalnas, the old money elite of the Dwarven Merchant Guild. He used it to build alliances and business ventures as if he were a member of the Orzammar Assembly. By the time Lady Ilsa died, Bartrand had made the Tethras family one of the guild's most influential, but wealth and power on the surface couldn't sate him. He began to court alliances with the wealthiest ascendants' families, branching into banking and mercenary companies. Guild members muttered that nothing will satisfy Bartrand but a complete reconstruction of House Tethras' estate in Orzammar, down to the rivers of lava built in Kirkwall. Bethany Hawke. If Bethany dies in Lothering. Hawke's youngest sister, Bethany, died during the family's fight from Lothering, leaving Hawke and Bethany's twin brother, Carver, as the only surviving children. Like Hawke, Bethany was an apostate mage in hiding from the circle since childhood. Protecting Hawke and Bethany from the Templars became the defining fact of the family's life, forcing them to move frequently and live well below their means in small hamlets in Lothering. Bethany was close to her elder sibling and idolized and envied the way Hawke embraced magic, but she could never give up her resentment of being different and fear for what the future would hold. If Bethany survives Lothering. I was just hoping it would be different here in Kirkwall. We're not running away. We're coming home. Even growing up as an apostate had not dimmed Bethany's faith and sunny nature, though it has colored her view of the world. Bethany wishes all else to be normal. She appreciates the trouble her family took to keep her out of the circle, but the running, hiding, and constant fear have taken their toll. Though she would never admit so to her mother, not after all she sacrificed to protect her, Bethany sometimes wonders whether she would be better off in the circle. At least there she would be with other mages, confident she'd be serving the will of the Maker, and not defying a millennium of religious teachings. Still, her first loyalty is to her family, Despite her doubts, she gladly embraces her magic if it keeps them safe. She has a teasing rivalry with her twin, Carver, and greatly respects Hawk. Bethany after the Deep Roads. If Bethany was not taken into the Deep Roads expedition. Bethany communicates often with her family since entering the circle, and she is adjusting to her new life with ease. For the first time, she can study magic without watching over her shoulder. After passing her much-delayed harrowing, she took a senior position within the circle, teaching and mentoring the newest apprentices. Bethany is surprised at how many Templars are honest Andrastians, who believe they serve the Maker and the people by keeping mages from using blood magic. However, this up-close look at the Templars has also shown her the abuses that inevitably occur when one group of people is given life and death power over another. Bethany supports the circle as it is, but this grows harder as Knight Commander Meredith clamps down more tightly. If Bethany was taken into the Deep Roads expedition with Anders present. Since joining the Grey Wardens, Bethany had little contact with her family. Resentful that her sibling escaped the Deep Roads unscathed while she nearly died, Bethany communicates only with the mother, relying little beyond the fact that she is alive and continues to travel with the Warden Stroud. Her responsibilities rarely bring her back to the Kirkball area. She usually patrols deep into the Free Marches or across the border in Ferelden, the only member of the Hawk family to return to their homeland. Carver Hawk. If Carver dies in Lothering. Carver grew up surrounded by magic he couldn't truly understand. He cared deeply for his family, but sometimes felt like the stupidest person in the room. Carver foundered in Lothering, caught between the gifts of his apostate sister, Bethany, and the growing skill of his more focused sibling, Hawk. But even as Carver groused about this a lot, he remained dedicated to protect those he loved. He didn't think twice about sacrificing himself to save his mother during the flight from the Darkspawn, and although Carver struggled to find his way in life, there is gratification in knowing his death had a purpose. If Carver survives Lothering. 100 ways to run, and we choose backward, whatever you say, but chasing an old name isn't really starting over. Strong and strapping, Carver is a skilled warrior set on proving himself, although it's not always clear who is he trying to impress. The son and sibling of mages, he grew up surrounded by magic he couldn't truly understand, and he feels like something was expected that he could never deliver. He cares deeply for his family, but sometimes feels like the stupidest person in the room. Carver foundered in Lothering. He blamed his lack of direction on not wanting to draw attention to his family of apostates at home. After his father died, he started down a military path. However, the blight and drought at Oscar ended his career almost before it could start. While he knows that swift flight was the only reasonable course in the face of Darkspawn advance, he almost would rather have stood and fought. Doomed though the effort was, facing the Horde had purpose, something Carver had been searching for. Carver, after the Deep Roads. If Carver was not taken into the Deep Roads expedition. Carver seldom contacts his family since joining the Templars. He gives excuses of duty and training, but his words are those of a man still uncertain of his choice. He has little in common with others of the Order, having come from a family so steeped in magic. And while he is certain that regulating the Circle is as much about protecting mages as it is controlling them, he has seen disturbing abuses of power. The purpose he has found in serving is strained by the blunt hate some of his superiors possess. There is good work to be done, but the path is more winding than he had imagined. If Carver was taken into the Deep Roads expedition, with Anders present. Carver rarely contacts his family since joining the Grey Wardens. His duty had taken him places even a soldier of Ferelden would never have seen. Despite his freedom and authority, Carver sees becoming a warden as another decision that was out of his control, although the choice to be in harm's way was certainly his. If pressed, he would admit that his grudge is as much about familiarity as it is about family. Even between flights, the Grey Warden oath is a heavy burden to bear. Accepting it can be a long process. Knight Captain Callan. Knight Captain Callan was one of the few Templars who survived the incident of the Circle of Magi in Ferelden. The possessed blood mage Aldred took over the tower, and in his madness he filled it with summoned demons and abominations. Callan was imprisoned, tortured, and forced to watch the slaughter of his fellow Templars. The ordeal shook him, and he emerged from it convinced that even Templars fail to see how dangerous mages can be. After Cullen returned to his duties, it became clear that he would go to any lengths to enforce the Chantry's lure. His zeal troubled Knight Commander Gregoire, who feared it unwise to let Callan watch over the men and women deemed responsible for his torment. Gregor sent Callan to serve under Knight Commander Meredith in Kirkwall, hoping time away would calm him, and Meredith found Callan's view on mages similar to her own. Of her company, only Callan had seen mages' potentially terrifying power firsthand, and she believed he could influence the other Templars' views. Consequently, Callan rose quickly through the ranks to become Knight Captain and Meredith's second in command. If the Warden was a female mage in Dragon Age origins. For some time a rumor has circulated in the Gallows that Knight Captain Callan's one fell in love with a young mage from the circle in Ferelden. The mage was recruited into the Grey Wardens and went on to become the hero of Ferelden. The rumor seems to cause Callan pain, though no one knows if it pains of the lost, unrecruited love, or if Callan is shamed by having had feelings for a mage, of all things. Knight Commander Meredith maintains that the rumor is untrue and punishes anyone caught repeating it. Fenris. Even those who live without chains are still bound, by fear, by tradition, by honor. Slaves dream of freedom, but I have found free men dream of it even more. Fenris was a slave, a bodyguard to Magister Denarius of the Deventer Imperium, until his escape several years ago. He speaks little of his past, saying only that he most recently came to Kirkwall from Tantervale in the north. The markings on his skin are akin to rune crafting, made of lyrium and ink. They suffuse Fenris' flesh with a power even he does not fully understand. The process of their creation was painful, and in unguarded moments, Fenris attempts to control the agony that lingers still. Even so, the markings enhance his fighting skill and have made him a unique and formidable warrior. Fenris, after the Deep Roads. Since the adventure into the Deep Roads, Fenris has remained in Kirkwall, maintaining the residence in Denarius' abandoned mansion. That doesn't truly belong to him has aroused the interest of curious neighbors, and thus the city guard. Eveline has so far deflected their inquiries on Fenris' behalf. However, she told him in no certain terms that the situation will not remain that way forever. Though seemingly unconcerned about the house, Fenris has become increasingly nervous over the last year. He doesn't know if he's actually free from pursuit or if his former master is planning something even worse. He tries not to think about it, taking pleasure in having a home for the first time in his life, even though his contact with anyone outside of the jobs he takes as a mercenary is very limited. Fenris, the last 3 years. If Hogg is in rivalry with Fenris. Fenris has remained in his Hightown mansion for the past 3 years. However, he's become increasingly restless and occasionally knows that it may almost be time for him to move on. Denarius has never reappeared, and Fenris assumes that he is now free to do as he wishes. But what will that be? For now he seems content to stay at Hogg's side for the sake of his old dad, although things are bound to change at some point. If Hogg is in friendship with Fenris. 3 years ago, after confronting Hadriana, Fenris learned of his long-lost sister. He has spoken little of it, though it clearly still preys on his mind. He has not left Kirkwall to pursue the matter, remaining in Denarius' mansion even though it is common knowledge in Hightown that a friend of the champion lives within. Fenris finds his high profile in the city both intriguing and alarming. Over the last year he has spoken more than once of leaving Kirkwall for good. If not for the debt he owes to Hogg, he would likely already have moved on. If Hogg is in romance with Fenris. As for the night Fenris and Hogg shared 3 years ago, he refuses to speak more of it. However, it's clearly he has not forgotten, although any lingering feelings remain unsolved. Whether that will change remains to be seen. Plymouth. You are required to do nothing, least of all believe. Ages ago, legend says, Ban Conobar took to a wife a beautiful young woman who harbored a secret talent for magic, Flemeth of Highever. and for a time they lived happily, until the arrival of a young poet, Osen, who captured the lady's heart with his verse. They turned to the chastened tribes for help, and hid from Conobar's wrath in the wilds, until word came to them that Conobar lay dying. His last wishes was to see Flemeth's face one final time. The lovers returned, but it was a trap. Conobar killed Osen and imprisoned Flemeth in the highest tower of the castle. In grief and rage, Flemeth worked a spell to summon a spirit into this world who took vengeance upon her husband. Vengeance she received, but not as she planned. The spirit took possession of her, turning Flemeth into an abomination. A twisted, maddened creature, she slaughtered Conobar and all his men, and fled back into the wilds. For 100 years Flemeth plotted, stealing men from the chastened to sire monstrous daughters, horrific things that could kill a man with fear. These Korkari witches led an army of chastened from the wilds to strike at the Alamari tribes. They were defeated by the hero Cormac, and all the witches burned, so they say, but even now the wilders whisper that Flemeth lives on in the marsh, and she and her daughters steal those men who come too near. Morrigan's mother saved the last Grey Wardens from death at the top of the Tower of Ishal, but just who or what Flemeth truly is a mystery. Grand Cleric Altina. We will never have peace unless we try to understand one another. Revered Mother Elfina assumed the mantle of Grand Cleric almost 20 years ago. She is responsible for the spiritual well-being to the southern Free Marches, everything south of Starkhaven and the Min and Third River. She has long been a calming presence in the city, renowned for her kindness and generosity. People frequently turn to her to mediate disputes, particularly those involving the powerful Templar Order, over whom she holds authority as the Chantry's ranking representative. Some claim that Eltina's advanced age has rendered her ineffective, and that she allows Knight Commander Meredith more leeway with each passing year. Some are calling on the new divine, Justinia V, to appoint a replacement, but they do so quietly, for Eltina is by far the most beloved priest the city has ever known. Hawk. If Hawk is a warrior or rogue. The son or daughter of Malcolm Hawk and Leandra Amel, Hawk has lived in many places throughout Ferelden. Their father and younger sister Bethany were apostate mages, thus the family was constantly on the move, avoiding Templar hunters. 10 years ago the family settled in the village of Lothering, building a home on the outskirts and making a life where they wouldn't forever be on the run. Though Leandra worried constantly that the Templars would one day catch up with them, Malcolm kept his abilities a secret and taught his daughter to do the same. He died 3 years ago, leaving Hawk responsible for the welfare of their mother and younger siblings. When the Blight began, Hawk and Carver quickly enlisted in King Caelan's regiment. The horde spilled from the Korkari wilds meant their home would be quickly overrun if the Darkspawn were not defeated immediately. However, the Battle of Ostagar ended with the betrayal and death of King Caelan. Hawk and Carver barely escaped the chaos with their lives, and returned to Lothering, to get their mother and Bethany out with the only moments to spare. If Hawk is a mage. The child of Malcolm Hawk and Leandra Amel, Hawk, has lived in many places throughout Ferelden. The father was a mage, and his gifts were passed on to both Hawk and Bethany, Malcolm's younger daughter. Malcolm refused to submit himself to the Chantry's rule. He kept his abilities secret and taught his children to do the same. Therefore, the family was constantly on the move to avoid Templar hunters. 10 years ago, the family settled in the village of Lothering, building a home on the outskirts and making a life where they wouldn't forever be on the run. Though Leandra worried constantly that the Templars would one day catch up with them, Malcolm's teachings were sufficient to keep them safe. He died 3 years ago, leaving Hawk responsible for the welfare of their mother and younger siblings. When the Blight began, Carver enlisted in King Caelan's regiment, saying the horde spilling from the Korkari wilds meant their home would be quickly overrun if the Darkspawn were not defeated immediately. Hawk remained in Lothering to safeguard the family. Carver appeared on their doorstep almost a month later, exhausted and injured. King Caelan had been betrayed and slain at Ostagar, and the horde was advancing on Lothering. Though Hawk and the others were making plans to leave, they fled their home before they were fully prepared. And it may still be too late. The hero of Ferelden. Hero's background. Human noble background. The hero of Ferelden was the younger son or the daughter of Bryce Causland, Tern of Highever. When Arl Rendenhouse forces attacked Castle Causland and murdered most of the Causland family, the hero escaped to safety with Grey Warden Commander Duncan, who then recruited them into the Order. Dalish Elf background. The hero of Ferelden once belonged to the clan of Dalish Elves. An encounter with a tainted magical mirror corrupted the hero, and only the Grey Wardens held the cure. To save the hero's life, the clan gave them up to the Grey Warden Commander Duncan and the Order. Dwarf noble background. The hero of Ferelden was born to noble house Aeducan of Orzammar, the second child of King Endrin Aeducan. After being charged with fratricide, the hero was exiled to the Deep Roads. There, they met the Grey Warden Commander Duncan, who then recruited them into the Order. City Elf background. The hero of Ferelden grew up in Denerim's impoverished elven alienage. A bitter clash with a Denerim noble during the hero's wedding resulted in the hero facing arrest by the city guards. The Grey Warden Commander Duncan recruited the hero, saving them from the certain death sentence. Mage background. The hero of Ferelden belonged to the circle of Magi in Ferelden, and resided in the tower at Lake Caelenhall for most of their life. First Enchanter Irving recommended the hero to the Grey Warden Duncan. Shortly after the hero's harrowing, Duncan recruited them into the Order. Dwarf commoner background. The hero of Ferelden was born castless in the slums of Orzammar. They impersonated a man of warrior castle on Orzammar Provings, a crime punishable by death. However, the hero's showing in the arena impressed Grey Warden Commander Duncan so much that he recruited the hero before they could be executed. Outcome of the final battle. If the hero survives through performing the dark ritual, the hero fought and killed the archdemon, and lived to tell the tale. With the archdemon gone, the darkspawn ranks broke, and the horde was easily routed. If the hero makes the ultimate sacrifice. The hero fought and killed the archdemon, making the ultimate sacrifice and dying to save Ferelden. With the archdemon gone, the darkspawn ranks broke and the horde was easily routed. If either Alistair or Loghain makes the sacrifice, the armies the hero had raised kill the archdemon. With the archdemon gone, the darkspawn ranks broke and the horde was easily routed. After the Blight. If the hero survived. After ending the Blight, the hero of Ferelden took up the mantle of Warden Commander and began the task of rebuilding the Order in Ferelden. If a female human noble married Alistair and became queen. After ending the Blight, the hero of Ferelden was wed to King Alistair and crowned Queen of Ferelden. She and the king now rule the country together. If imported from a save where a male human noble married Queen Anora. After ending the Blight, the hero of Ferelden was wed to Queen Anora. He now bears the title of Prince Consort. Isabella. I'm Isabella, previously Captain Isabella. Sadly, without my ship, that title rings a bit hollow. Isabella is vague about her days as a sea captain, though it's obvious she's involved with piracy and smuggling. Shortly after the Blight ended, Isabella's ship was caught in a storm near the Wounded Coast. The vessel was destroyed and Isabella feels lucky to have escaped with her life. Now she's stranded in the Free Marches, spending most of her time in a hangman tavern. Isabella also reveals that she was born in Ravane, but spent many years in Antiva. When asked about those years, she changes the subject. Isabella after the Deep Roads. Isabella spent the past several years trying to track down the relic that she lost in the shipwreck. She believes that it's still in Kirkwall, though why she thinks so is a mystery. Despite her insistence that she's keeping a low profile to avoid her old employer, Castillon, Isabella seems to go out of her way to cause trouble. Recently, one of her duels evolved into a bar brawl that then spilled out into Longtown. Involving over 20 people, the fracas caused a great deal of damage to several merchant stalls. Isabella spent the next 2 weeks in the brig, Guard Captain Evelyn allowed her release, but not before extracting a promise that Isabella would not duel on public property again. Whether Isabella actually keeps this promise remains to be seen. Isabella, the last 3 years. If Hawke is in friendship with Isabella. Isabella's return during the Canary crisis was surprising, most of all to Isabella herself. She blamed Hawke for inspiring her to such foolishness and seemed to regret exposing herself to danger. After the Arishok was killed, Isabella was seen in deep conversation with Hawke. The exchange ended as Isabella walked off, saying, "You're reading into it too much." If Hawke is in romance with Isabella. Isabella's return during the Canary crisis was surprising, most of all to Isabella herself. She blamed Hawke for inspiring her to such foolishness, and seemed to regret exposing herself to danger. After the Arishok was killed, a tense exchange between Isabella and Hawke ended with Isabella leaving, saying, "If I don't do it for them, I did it for you. It was always about you." If Hawke is in rivalry with Isabella. When Isabella returned during the Canary crisis, tome of Coslan in hand, she knew she would have to answer to Hawke to her previous betrayal. After the Arishok was killed, Isabella was seen engaged in a heated argument with Hawke. It ended with Isabella storming off after letting loose a torrent of profanity. It was the last anyone in Kirkwall saw of her for some time. Many believed that she had left the Three Marshes for good. Then, as abruptly as she had departed, Isabella appeared one day in her usual spot in the Hanged Man, drinking as though she had never had been gone. Viscount Marlowe Dumois. What happened to Viscount Perrin Fernhold was a travesty. I served in the keep, and my blood boils when I hear people call him a tyrant. He was a good man who tried his best to free Kirkwall from the control of those who use power for their own purposes. It's always been that way here, hasn't it? Long ago it was the Imperium, then it was the Cunari, then the Orlesians, now the Templars. When have we ever ruled ourselves? He tried to kick those Templar bastards out and give us the freedom. And what did they get him? Now the Chantry has chosen Lord Marlowe Dumas as his replacement. After weeks and weeks of arguing, after telling the nobility that they would be choosing the Viscount, after everyone saying it was time to use a new title, why not King? Why keep using the name imposed by the Orlesians? And after all that, the Chantry chose him. I suppose I can see why. Everyone thinks he has the spine of a jellyfish, and it does seem that way. Truly, he has the Templars on one side, the nobility on the other, and everyone expects him to solve all their problems, yet he has no power to actually accomplish it. He keeps the peace as best as he can, and I think he does a good job even if no one else does. And he loves that sad little boy. I see the way young Seamus looks at his father, and I feel for him. Locked up in the keep with no other children, watching his father be put down by every self-important windbag that walks into the Great Hall. It makes me miss the days of Perrin Fernhold, even if they were chaotic. We can only hope that one day Seamus gives this city the legacy it deserves. Excerpt from a letter by an unknown servant, found in the gallows vaults, 928 Dragon. Knight Commander Meredith. I have sympathy for the mages. They bear a terrible course, one that endangers not only themselves, but innocents as well. We allow them freedom only at the risk of unleashing them upon the unwary. Knight Commander Meredith Stannard is native of Kirkwall. An orphan who joined the Templar Order when quite young, she worked her way up ranks with sheer determination. She is credited with removing the previous Viscount Perrin Fernhold from his position after he attempted to have the Templars expelled from the city in 921 Dragon. The acting Knight Commander was arrested and executed, and Meredith led a group of Templars into the heart of the keep to capture Fernhold. He was tried and imprisoned 3 days later by Grand Cleric Althina, and died from poisoning 2 years later. Meredith was subsequently elevated to his current position. Many say that Templars fought only to preserve their position in Kirkwall, not to oppose Fernhold's tyranny. Others believe Meredith has always held the moral high ground, even if not all approve of her methods. For now, she enjoys the Grand Cleric's full support and has free reign in Kirkwall as the commander of its most powerful military force. Merrill. The stories tell us that all Elven once had the gift, but like so many things, it was lost. It's a keeper's job to remember, to restore what we can. As each generation passes, magic becomes more rare among the Dalish. As the gift dies out, talented children are moved between clans so that every keeper has a successor, and no clan is in danger of being left without guidance. Merrill was born to the Illyrian clan, which wandered the hills of Navarra. She was the third child of the clan with the ancient gift born to her. When the next Arlatan gathering of the clans occurred, she was given to the Sabrae clan to be first to keep her Marathari. Merrill was just 4 years old. She spent most of her life in Ferelden and the Korcari Wilds until her clan was driven north by the Blight. Merrill, after the Deep Roads, is a keeper's place to remember, even the dangerous things. Since her arrival in Kirkwall's elven alienage, Merrill has had difficulty adjusting. Her neighbors ignore her existence, and even the most determined socialites in Lowtown cross the street to avoid her. She also gets lost frequently, a matter that doesn't seem to be solving itself through time or familiarity with the city. On separate occasions she has accidentally found herself in the Viscount bathing room, the Chantry airing cupboard, and in the middle of dog racing in Darktown. Merrill, the last 3 years. If Hawk is in friendship or rivalry with Merrill. Everything I do, everything I've ever done, was for the good of my people. Merrill spends more and more of her time locked away in her house in the alienage with her mirror. She only leaves for food, which she does so rarely that Varric has taken to having produce delivered to her door. At least she no longer gets lost as she wanders the city. If Hawk is in romance with Merrill. If you hadn't come to Sundermouth that day, I can't imagine where I'd be now. Merrill moved into Hawk's mansion in Hightown, and not as a servant, much to the horror of the neighbors. She further scandalized the neighborhood by wandering around with no shoes on, picking the flowers out of people's gardens, and cooing cheerfully at their attack dogs. Several angry letters were sent to the champion and the seneschal, but the situation remains unchanged. She continues to return to her ramshackle house in the alienage, spending a great deal of time working on her mirror. First Enchanter Orsino. You deny us our freedom so that you may sleep better at night, but I say it is a restless and undeserved slumber. First Enchanter Orsino is an elf from the Free Marches city in Asburg, who was brought to the gallows when he was very young. Some claim he became the youngest first enchanter to hold the position in Kirkwall, not by his own merit, but because nobody else wanted it. He would call that cynicism. Someone must advocate for the mages after all. Even if the job is thankless, the alternative would be for Kirkwall mages to have no advocate whatsoever. For the past 5 years, Orsino has had constant, sometimes very public, disputes with Knight Commander Meredith. The common belief amongst the populace is that he is a troublemaker, possibly a dangerous one. Varric Tethras. I know everyone in this city worth knowing. Varric was born 3 years after his father's exile from Orzammar. Into the world of the Merchant Guild, the ancestors never spoke, and paragons were the heroes in tall tales. The number of dances on a Kalna lady gave to a lowborn ascendant boy were more pivotal than the reign of kings. While Bartrand ran the business and drove House Tethras ever higher up the social ladder, Varric looked after the family and the retainers. His mother, Lady Elsa, suffered terribly from the trauma of her disgrace and exile, finding solace in liquor and smoke. It fell to her younger son to try and curb the burst of her drunken rages, to keep her from becoming a matter of public scandal, and to care for her when she fell ill from her excesses. Though he is famous throughout the Merchant Guild for his stories, Varric speaks rarely of himself or his family. Most of Kirkwall knows him. Everyone has bought him a drink, or at least once, for the sake of his fiction rather than his family connections. Varric, after the Deep Roads. Bianca sends her regards. Barsham vanishes after the Deep Road expedition, and Varric had to divert his attention from searching for his wayward brother to keep the now abandoned family business from falling apart. Varric now occupies his brother's seat in the Dwarven Merchant Guild. Technically, He rarely attends guild meetings and is hardly ever seen actually occupying the chair in the hall that belongs to our Tetras. He prefers to run the Tetras financial empire from his suite of the hangman, and he never replies to his mail. Varric, the last 3 years. There's power in stories. That's all history is, the best tales. The ones that last. Might as well be mine. If Bertrand lives. Varric saw Bertrand settled into a sanitarium just outside Kirkwall, run by the Chantry. He then took up the mantle of House Tetras officially. If Bertrand was killed. The death of his elder brother forced Varric to take up the mantle of House Tetras officially. However, according to the updated official Kirkwall and Merchants Guild documentation, the family businesses are run by non-existent uncles, aunts, cousins, and household pets. Zebran Aranai. We are in danger, friend. 2 of the 7 guildmasters are already in Zebran Aranai's pocket, and the guildmaster of Rioto is dead. With no proof exists, we both know he has involved whether he claims the deed or not. They should have released him when they discovered he lived. Honor of the Antivan Kraus, be damned. What option do we have now? If the warden didn't romance Zebran. After centuries of unity that have led us to rule a nation from the shadows and have placed kings and queens in our pockets, we are being torn apart from within by a single elf who didn't even succeed in his mission to kill the so-called hero of Perelden. If the warden romanced Zebran. After centuries of unity that have led us to rule a nation from the shadows and have placed kings and queens in our pockets, we are being torn apart from within by a single elf who didn't even succeed in his mission. How could anyone have guessed that the Grey Warden would become his lover and support his crusade, that Zebran would help defeat the Blight and become a hero within the crowds even as we branded him anathema? The guildmasters dismissed Zebran's threat without considering just how many assassins were similarly disaffected. Too many of our numbers have been cheated out of their rightful tithes, driven into hiding, or intimidated into silence. And somehow Zebran is fighting them all. You report that he is not in Antiva, but that isn't always the case. He appears in the city until our operatives find him and chase him out into Rivain or the Free Marches, and then we never hear from them again. We have both spoken to the remaining guildmasters, and they have denied us. They are blind, and it makes me think maybe Zebran is right. Perhaps it is time for a change. From a half-burned letter found in Treviso warehouse. 935 Dragon.